at the White House last night. Most people in that crowd were not wearing masks, and they were not social distancing at Vice President Pence's address last night.
That's absolutely right. No, it is. It's very surprising. Again, often, and we've asked the Vice President this publicly, why is it so often they give us guidance and then they don't follow it? Everything from shaking hands to wearing masks to social distancing, and the administration has really had any answers.
Yes, that was Gayle King and Paula Reed pondering as to why people aren't wearing masks outside. Well, Congressman Michael Waltz, he's on the House Armed Services Committee. He's a former senior advisor for counterterrorism to Vice President Cheney, may have some answers for us. He will be at the president's speech tonight. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to be with you.
So you heard what they had to say. Now, apparently, just as a caveat, Gayle King also doesn't know about the rioting that's happening without social distancing and no masks. So, she may not be an expert on the subject. What are the guidelines for tonight?
Well, they've asked us to have masks. Those are mandatory. I was just looking at the invitation. Particularly when you're moving around some of the tighter spaces, the hallways of the White House, heading in through the East Wing. But when we're sitting out there outside in spaced out chairs, listening to the president, I think it's perfectly acceptable to take your mask off. So that's my understanding of what they're asking. Look, at the end of the day, this is yet another distraction. Yesterday, it was an obsession over the Hatch Act and the president giving a speech from the White House, having an immigration ceremony from the White House, having a pardoning there. When really what they don't want to talk about is the list of policies that every speaker has been talking about and real Americans that have been positively affected by them, from trade policy in how it affects fishing and Maine lobsters, to the USMCA trade deal, to justice reform, the judges that the president has put on the bench through the Senate, tax reform, deregulation, veterans reform. I mean, the president has been able to get more done in 3 years despite everything thrown against him. And that's what the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about, hasn't want to talk about. And what this convention is about is getting that message over to the voters and the rest of America. How many times have you heard the mainstream media talk about how many lives have been affected by the right to try legislation,
right,
where people with terminal illnesses can go get whatever drugs that are out there because why? They've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. The president made that happen. It's common sense. But the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I actually learned because, and I do this for a living. I'm watching all news all the time and consuming from all different sources all the time. And there were some things that were mentioned during the convention the last couple of nights that I didn't realize even happened. When the president was going to the prisoners event, I think it's prisoners. I forget what the name of the organization is called, and he granted a pardon to the gentleman who was involved in that and who founded that organization. That was amazingly touching, granting that pardon on national TV to that gentleman who clearly had no idea that it was coming. You just saw the look on his face, and the camera zoomed right in. It was perfect. I didn't even know that the president
have been pushing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that for people who didn't know, this was a program to get prisoners who are going out into the real world being released, to give them some skills and give them life skills and how to cope with it and give them a start, right, so that they don't just get dumped onto the street with $15 in their pocket and a bag in their hand with their belongings in it. And the president went to one of the graduations for this program, and he was supposed to be there for 5 minutes, and he was there for an hour and a half, and he shook the hand of every single prisoner who was graduating from that program. I had never heard that before. If that had been right, President Barack Obama, it would have been the lead story on every newscast. You would not have been able to avoid it.
Well, and the Democrats have been pushing for justice reform since the 1994 Biden crime bill. And the president was finally able to get it done. Veterans groups have been pushing for veterans accountability and for veterans to have choice. If you have to travel too far or wait too long or not get the care you need from the VA, because that is effectively government-run healthcare that liberals want to just take nationwide, then you can take a card and just go to your doctor. Veterans have been pushing for that for years. The president got it done. Advocates of space power, seeing what the Russians and Chinese are doing to take down our assets that our economy depends on, have been pushing for more attention to it. The president got a whole new branch of the military dedicated to it in just a year and a half. And all of those things are again, what Democrats and the media don't want to talk about. But to your point, the humanizing piece of the president, every time I've been with him, he stops whatever we're doing when he sees a police officer and walks over, talks to him, asks them about how they're doing, and takes a photo with them without fail. Military members, people in uniform, first responders. And what I loved about yesterday's theme, the Land of Heroes, was that was acknowledged across the board. And what you didn't hear from the Democrats was not only did they not mention the violence going on in our cities, but they didn't mention the 99.9% of our men and women in blue who put on that badge every day to keep our communities safe. And that humanizing piece of the president was so important to get across. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had brought up Joe Biden. Let's talk a little bit about what we didn't hear. We didn't hear what how Joe Biden's going to do anything. We heard what he wants to finally do that he hasn't done in almost 50 years. But now in the next 4 years, he's going to accomplish these things. I want to talk a little bit about Joe Biden's China policy. We've heard from Joe Biden that China is not a threat. Do you have any idea how Joe Biden intends to handle China?
Well, he's actually been very clear over the years in multiple speeches. He sees the rise of China as a good thing. I mean, these are quotes, as a peaceful thing, as something to be celebrated. In just the last week, in an interview with ABC, and in another forum, he quoted Mao Zedong, the dictator,
yes,
the founder of the Chinese Communist Party, responsible for tens of millions of deaths. One of his key advisors, Anita Dunn, lists Mao as one of her favorite philosophers. So I think it's very clear that he is going to be soft on China. He does not see them for the threat they are. And look, the listeners don't need to take this from me or even President Trump. Listen to Chairman Xi, the president of China's own words, when he talks about in the next decade being the dominant superpower where China calls the shots and the United States doesn't. Look at what they're doing to Hong Kong, the Muslim Uyghurs, the Tibetan Buddhists, the persecution of Christians, and how they are on the march around the world and creating just the South China Morning Post just yesterday had a senior Chinese official threatening to use their production of pharmaceuticals against us if we don't back off when it comes to Hong Kong and these other human rights issues, because now they produce 90% of our pharmaceuticals. So Amazing. These are all things that the president has to take. This is absolutely why we have to have the president reelected, because they are a threat not only to the United States, but to our freedoms around the world.
Absolutely. And the president is the one, I think, who absolutely will take that on. Before we run out of time here, the Democrats have been quoted on condition of anonymity, several Democratic strategists being their titles, that they're concerned that Joe Biden is not traveling. He's right now on vacation in Delaware. He's riding his bicycle with a helmet this time. And but he's not traveling around. They've got Kamala Harris coming out today at 3 o'clock to give a speech because President Trump's making his speech tonight. It's not Joe Biden giving that speech. It's Kamala Harris. How long can they keep hiding Joe Biden?
Well, I think the Democrats are really in a box here because let's look at just the last few months. I mean, the president, Vice President Biden, is not under any pressure. He's not stressed. He's in his comfortable basement. The media certainly is not asking him any tough questions. We saw President Trump sit down with Chris Wallace in the Rose Garden in 98-degree weather for almost 2 hours in an extensive back and forth. He hasn't subjected himself to any of those things, and I think his handlers know that he is not in a physical or mental position to handle it. So I think they were hoping to cruise across the finish line. And I just want to say one more thing, because I'm in the House of Representatives and I'm dealing with Nancy Pelosi and the squad every week. They will run Washington, D.C. Kamala Harris, California Senator, Nancy Pelosi, California Congresswoman, they will look to remake America to look like California. And the disaster that it is right now, they will be running the White House. And the Senate is already indicating they'll get rid of the filibuster. Washington, D.C. is the next state to get 2 more senators, and they will pass national ballot harvesting to change the way we vote to lock down power. That's what's at stake here. And we have to get out as conservatives and Republicans to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one quick, I always say this whenever I get the chance to speak with a congressman or woman, I always say to them, please, every morning, wake up and think to yourselves, what would Democrats do? Because Democrats are so proactive. They have a game plan. We know what their game plan is because they tell us what it is, because they know that Republicans will be caught off guard somehow every single time. You're seeing it with mail-in voting. We know what the plan is. We know they're going to contest the election. They told Joe Biden not to concede at all. It's out there. Republicans need to start fighting. That's the only thing I ask, is to please start fighting. That's all.
Listen, I wake up every day thinking about the Green Berets that I lost overseas, and an America that cannot be led by socialists and a world that cannot be led by Chinese communists. That my commitment to their children is to have an America as we know and love it, and that they died for. So I'm with you all the way. You've got a fighter in Mike Waltz.
Well, we appreciate that, Congressman Michael Waltz. Thank you so much. Enjoy the speech tonight. I'm so jealous that you get to go. Think of me watching it at home, sitting in bed, wishing that I were there. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
All right. God bless, Mary. Talk to you soon.